Okay, my name's Graham Armfield. Some of you know me as the accessibility guy. However, my presentation tonight is not really about accessibility, although I do mention it at a couple of moments here and there. What I'm instead going to talk to you about is some simple usability improvements that you can make for your WordPress theme, thereby your website, whether you do it for your own website or for your client's website. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to cover the things about helping visitors find what they're looking for more easily on your site. I'm not going to talk about search engine optimization. I'm going to assume people have already arrived. I'm going to be doing a bit of coding, nothing rocket science. There's very simple stuff, which suits my coding style. And I'm looking at stuff for in the search pages, the blog pages, archive, etc. I'm also going to mention a couple of plugins, one in more detail which is to do with search results, and I mentioned in passing a couple talking about pagination. Now, as I said, there's nothing really complicated going on. These are just ideas. I'm not saying you've got to do this stuff. It's just sort of stuff that's I've done for a couple of clients in the last few months. If you want to take stuff away from it, that's good. The code examples are very simple. You might have to customise them for your own needs if you want to use them later on. I will make the slides available. There's going to be a few small sections in keeping with the Lightning Talks presentation. Happy to take questions as we go if you like. Just put your hand up and or shout and I'll answer them. Okay, so the first section, small section, is improving the display of your search results. So giving visitors feedback about the search they just did. Now this is a screenshot from using the 2011 theme. I've taken a copy of a live site and put it in there. And what we've got at the top is, this is the actual heading for the page, very small, but it's a heading 1. And it tells you what the search was about. I've got the title of whatever it is, and then the excerpt going on there. Now, just a small thing you can do, which I think is a lot more helpful, is to do this. I've repeated the search term there in this paragraph, but this is a key item here. I've told the user how many items were returned by the search that I did. And it just helps people to orientate themselves within the results. If they get 50 results back, they may of course want to choose to refine their search a little bit. Just helps out really, and that's in the theme I built for someone a while ago. Now how we do this in your code, this is what's there already in 2011. You probably recognise it. Heading 1, and I'm using this WordPress function here called the search query, which just echoes out to the page whatever the user or visitor said. I'm adding some new bits here. There's a paragraph, and I'm echoing it once again here. But the key bit, the new bit, is this one. The actual search query has a variable attached to it called found posts, and that's simple as that. So you just echo it out to the screen. And so that's the end of the first section. Now I want to talk a bit about search results, how to get a better search results. Now the WordPress search, we're probably all familiar with it. It's a powerful search capability and it's there for everyone to use. It's also dynamic, and by that I mean, as you probably know, that if you add a new page or a post or whatever to your site, that becomes available for the search straight away. But there are limitations, and I want to mention a couple. The first one is that whenever you do a search using a default WordPress search, the results are always ordered nearest first, which of course means that if you mentioned something in passing in a post you did last week, that will appear further up the results set than actually when you wrote a big article about it 6 months ago. The other thing is that I don't like is that there's no indication of the use of the search terms. You know, it helps visitors perhaps if they can see how you've used a word, then they'll know whether it's more relevant for what they're talking about. So, in order to do this, we're not talking code here, but I always recommend this Relevant Site plugin. I use this on most sites that I do these days, and there's the URL for it. Like I said, these slides will be available, so you can pick it up from there. It's got a lot of options, this plugin. But the key ones that I've pulled out, and there are loads, is that you can do the search based on relevance. Relevant size apparently finished for relevance, and the guy who wrote the plugin is finished. You can do an and or search. If you've got multiple search words, you can configure it to do an and or search. Fuzzy matching if you don't get a hit with the clean search. This is the one I really like, the customised excerpts to show the use of search terms within your excerpts. I think it also has the option to actually record how many times the search term was used within that item. You can set a minimum search word length, so it blocks things like verb to, etc., etc. It logs searches, so you can go and have a look and see what visitors are actually searching for on your own site. It's also, this is really useful, compatible out of the box with custom post types, and there's loads of other options as well. When you first install this plugin, you have to actually build the index, but then it runs pretty much itself after that. The only limitation that I've come across so far is if you've got pages where the content is delivered to the page using a shortcode, that does not automatically get refreshed in the search results. So you have to rebuild the index there. If that matters, then maybe this is not quite the right thing for you. So here I've just got a couple of screenshots of options, and you can see the default operator for the searches. And there's also an OR fallback. If you can disable that if you want to. When to use fuzzy matching, and there's another aspect here. This is where you can influence, not completely control, but influence how the plugin works out the relevance of items. Okay. Now here is a screenshot from the site where this plugin is being used. Obviously it's telling me what the search was, sign language, returns 61 items. That's not surprising considering it's a site for deaf people. But you can see here it's highlighted, and you can configure this to do whatever colour you want or make it dull. Yes?
Quick question. That 61 items, was that your line of code or was that in Relevancy?
No, that's my line of code. This is where, because this particular site, which is Deaf Unity, which is a client of mine, I've used a lot of these techniques in because they've got a lot of custom post types, and the guy really likes the sort of like the usability changes that I suggested. So no, that's the sentence I put in the last section. Something else is interesting here is this particular person's website. They've actually wanted to try out the OR search. So you notice that as well as highlighting sign language there as one piece, it's also highlighted language and sign separately. The other thing about this is, I think that is actually the first paragraph of that item. But this is where the plugin has created a custom excerpt because it doesn't feature higher up or in the actual excerpt of the page. And it's actually created a customised excerpt, and you can control the length of the excerpt that can come out. And that's it. That's a bit about search. Whipping on to the next bit. Customising post type display. Because not all post types are the same. This was something that was I brought in on a couple of sites I've done, including the one, the Deaf Unity one I just mentioned, where it's got many different custom post types, and so this is helping people find their way around and find out what items are. This is useful for the archive page, whether it's by date or category, and the search results page as well. Also, I guess if no, that's probably the two where it's most useful. And as I say, especially where you've got many different post types, events, articles, reviews, etc., etc. Now, once again, I've got my example from 2011 here, and this is, I believe, search results going on here. I can't remember what I searched for here. It'll tell me in a minute, I'm sure. But it's like, it's got the title, the excerpt, read more link, and leave a reply, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't tell you that this is in fact an article that was written by this woman. So that's in the articles section of the site. And this one is actually an event for deaf people. So that's not there. Right, so in order to do this, I haven't found a plugin that would do this for me, so we're going to create a little function here. And we're going to call it, for want of a better title, get post type attributes. Now, I'm doing the function first on this one. I'll show. We're going to pass in the post type, the WordPress post type, into this function. The first thing I'm going to do is set up a switch, so I'm going to decide based on the post type. And this is an example, it's a Mickey Mouse example. I'll be adding bits to this function a little later on. So I found a page, and so I'm setting the string to page. Now, if you think, well, okay, fair enough, but then this is another, this is from the same site. If it's a post, clients, sometimes, I discovered this about 18 months ago, clients don't really like sometimes the term blog and posts. I asked a client a while ago whether they wanted to use the built-in WordPress blogging functionality facility on their site. They said, no, I don't want anything like that. But what I would like is a facility where I can publish occasional updates of what my company's up to. And you're thinking, that's the same thing, isn't it? So news items seems to be quite a popular term that I use. You might want to ask your clients about that. And then I'm returning the string at the end. So here, this is in the loop bit. I'm calling the function here, and I'm using this WordPress function to pull out the actual post type of the thing that I'm dealing with, and then I'm setting a variable because I'm going to use this later on. Like I said, this is not necessarily the best or the easiest way of doing it. It's just the way I've done it. And here's a new bit. I'm actually going to put the heading 2 out for the item itself. So I'm constructing the permalink, and then I'm echoing type name, which is the name of the item, which could be news item, event, or whatever. I just put in brackets. And then what that looks like, it's obviously hacked together screenshot from that particular site, and you can see that at the end of each item, it's got the name. Apart from the page, the client didn't, for some reason, want it to say page on that one. Further customisations that you could do using this kind of functionality is whether or not to show a publish date or the author or whatever. Now, the publish date is quite relevant if you're dealing with a news item or a blog post or whatever like that, but it's less relevant if you're talking about a resource or a job or something like that. The other thing I'm going to talk a bit about as well, show you, is how you customise the read more link. But there are loads of other things that you could do here using this sort of like switching functionality. So here's the function as it was. I've stretched it out a little bit because I'm going to add some new stuff in now. I've got a couple of extra variables. Do I want the date to be shown or not? That's either true or false. And then I'm going to set up a string for each of my post types. And then on that particular site, there's about six or seven different post types, and so they all customise different things. And then I'm passing these values back to wherever the function was called from. And this is where I'm going to call it. That's what was there before. And then this is the first new bit. And so here I'm testing the value of that one, which is whether or not I'm supposed to show the date. And if I do, then I pull out the published date. You can use this for categories and stuff like this as well, obviously. And then I'm going to put out the excerpt for the item. And then at the end, I construct a read more link. Now, those of you who know I'm into accessibility, I'm quite keen on verbose read more links rather than just a series of links that just say click here or read more or whatever like that. I like to put the title in read more links because that helps people to give context to them. So what does that look like? These are just screenshots from that particular site I mentioned before, and you can see the post types on all of them, the published dates on these but not on jobs, and then I've customised, I hope you can see that at the back. It's read the full news item, read the full article interview and stuff like that. So it's just little ideas that you can take on there. That's, it's relevant on search, I suppose. Because custom post types, you might have might be able to set categories for those as well. So of course in the archives page that could archive.php is what we relevant to. I think that's all on that bit. Anyone got any questions before I carry on? Right, pagination. This is helping businesses move around lists of posts and search results. So here's a thing we're all familiar with. This is actually from my own site. I can't remember if this is from search or whatever, but the key thing is these things down here, older entries and newer entries. And that we are achieved using these WordPress functions, previous post link and next post link. I haven't changed my own site to improve my own site yet, but I'll be doing that soon. This might be okay for a site with not many posts, but what if you've got loads? Here's perhaps a better way of doing it, where you've got the item itself, and then at the bottom of the page, you've got the newer and the older link that we had on the previous example, but for every actual page of results, you've got a link to that page, so people can go straight to that particular page if they want to. And it also gives them an idea about how many posts, how many items we've got to deal with. Put at the bottom there. Okay, so you can use plugins to do this. And I think Tony, you use WP Page Nav, is that right?
Me?
Yes, you, Tony.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I can confirm.
You can confirm that.
No, yes, I are, yeah.
Yeah.
But in fact, yeah, it's still being developed, but it is.
Right. It looks a bit old in places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can divide it.
Yeah. There is another one which is a possible candidate for doing this, called WP Paginate. But as I mentioned earlier, for this particular site that had lots of different custom post types, I wanted to do quite a lot of customization, so I decided to write my own. And the thing about both these plugins is that you do actually need to edit the theme files in order to use them. So I decided to build my own functionality. Now, if anyone's interested, this is how I'm going to do it. And a little bit about pagination. I'm sure a lot of you know this anyway. Common queries like the blog page, the archive page, whatever, they're paged by default. And the number of posts is set in the admin section. Of course, you can override it by using pre-get posts if you want to. I'm not going to talk any more about that. That's Scott's baby. Custom queries, though, if you're using this, if you're, say, presenting a landing page for events or resources or whatever like that, they're not paged by default. But when you call the query, you can use post per page and paged in the query arguments to actually influence the results that you get. So, once you've done the query, there are two bits of information that are quite useful here to help create this styling. The first one is this, where you get the query value called page, and it tells us which page of results we're on, whether it's 1, 2, 3. And then the other one is the maximum number of pages, which, as it says, this tells you the maximum number of pages it would take to show all the results. This is obviously a product of however many posts or items that you've got, and the posts per page setting that's either set in or in the query in the first place. The good thing about this, it works with default queries and custom queries together. So there's going to be a bit of coding going on now. We'll put some code in the loop and a function to actually write out the HTML to do this. Right, so at first I'm going to do it in the actual so archive or index.php at the start of the loop. I'm going to pull out a couple of values. Here I'm going to pull out the page to query value and set it into a variable. Now, as far as I can tell, if you're on the first page of results, then this value is not actually set. And so I've used this ternary operator to actually set it to 1. So if it is set, then you pull out the variable. If it isn't, then you just set it to 1. Because it's on the first page. The other bit of useful thing here is this variable that's attached to the query, maximum number of pages. So, and at the point, whether it's at the top or the bottom of the blog page or your archive page or whatever, you can put the call to the function. Here, I put in this test to see, because obviously I don't necessarily want to put any of this stuff out if there's only actually ever one page of results. So I'm putting out a title, a heading there, and then I'm calling the function, passing it the query and the value of paged. Right, here's the function. I've called it do paging for want of a better name. First thing I'm going to do is to start a string. What we want to do here is return a list of links. Now, I suppose semantically the best thing to do is to put it in an unordered list. So we start off the string like that. The first thing I want to do at the left-hand side is to put out the previous link. And I want to do that in every situation except for when I'm on the first page. And so that's what that test is there all about. And then I create the link, which notice it's taking one off the value of page there in order to get the page results before the one I'm on at the moment. Part 2 of the function, I'm going to create this loop. Maximum number of pages, so I want to put out something for every single page that I'm going to, of the results that I'm going to deal with. So I set a loop, note that starts at 1 rather than 0 like a and then after that, the very first thing I want to do is to check, am I on this page? Because when I do this, I prefer not to put out a link if I'm up on that page. It seems a bit nonsense to have like links to go to the point to the page you're actually in the first place. And so I'm just putting out a number there. So the main meat of it though is if I'm not on that page, then I'm going to construct a link to the page. Now, another accessibility feature here, a list of links that are just numbers doesn't really make any sense to someone who happens to visit your site, maybe using a screen reader. So what I'm doing here is I'm stuffing it with a bit of context, and you can put whatever you like in here, that actually adds some text to the link. Now in your style sheet, and I'm not talked at all about style sheets in this at all, you're going to have to sort of do that styling yourself. But I've got this span here, which is set to the class of SRDR, and that's basically, it's like hidden from sighted users, but it's available for screen reader users. And so it just gives a bit of context for what's going on. The function part 3. Okay, so we've done the loop through where we list all the individual pages of results, and now we want to put out an older closest link. And so I want to do that on every page except for the very last one, so it's a similar test to the first one. We see on that it runs the value of page to go on. And then the last bit is that I finish up with the closing the list and then return the string to where it's called for. That's it. Possible enhancements that you can do there, and this is partly why I've done this on my own, is that sometimes when you've got custom post types, the concept of newer and older isn't relevant. Next and previous could work as a catch-all maybe, but you might want to customise this to whatever, what is appropriate text streams there. So I've done that. Doing paging on a search results, the actual required URL for that is a bit more complicated than I showed before, and so I haven't bothered to do that because I want to go into massive detail. But you'll need to sort of, if you know that you're going to use this on a search page, you'll need to feed in perhaps the fact that you're on the search page and structure the actual links a little bit different. And also, this is from a theme where if your site's been running for a few years, or you've got bloggers who are particularly prolific, you might end up with 23 pages of results. Now, of course, with the function as it stands, it would actually print them all out one after the other. Now, not everyone wants that, and so what I've done here is I've changed the function so it's got a cluster at the front, a cluster at the back, and a cluster in the middle. And if your current page falls within the group, it sort of clusters them around that. And where I've put like this sort of holding text in there to sort of help to imply that there's some missing pages there.
Isn't there a plugin for that?
Yeah, the WP Page Navi and WP Paginate do it. They seem to work perfectly well. I think Tony's point about it not being Page Navi not being updated, I had a look at that and it looks a bit old. The other thing is that what I'm doing here works with custom queries as well. I'm not certain that the plugins actually work out of the box with custom queries. So if you want to create a landing page, for a better word. Hello.
Yeah, hi. I think it's very useful just to indicate that everything else has a lot of pages, but when you think about it, these pages are dynamic pages.
Yeah.
So in the normal, people are new to this way of displaying things. When you think about it, in the traditional blog way, every time you add a new post at the top, it shuffles down one.
Yes.
So these pages are not pages in the sense that if I go back to page 8 next week, I'll be emailed to extra first.
Yes.
the content of page 8 will change.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yes. I mean, you're right there. There is a...
So what I'm saying, I think they're mainly useful just to indicate to you, that, for example, if you use this on a search, or you're just looking for stuff, just to indicate that this is a site or website.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes it from that point of view, but as I said, I think people are not used to this way of displaying it properly. Approach from the point on the tag, please note that the dynamic changes.
Yes.
The context of each page will change.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take your point. I mean...
Yeah, I'm not going to let these because I'm
No,
on my own side.
It's like horses for courses, really. Yes.
Could another enhancement be showing how many entries are on each page? So you could be,
Yeah, that's a good
I may
point.
be on page 9, but that's actually entry 90 through 100.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. You can certainly do that. Because you can pull out the value of the post per page quite easily. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's you can take this and customise it to what you want to do. The thing that was key for me was that I had lots loads of different post types to deal with, and so I wanted to make sure that it worked how I wanted it to do. I mean, my actual function has got a lot more going on. And that's all I'm going to talk about pagination, really. Any questions? I know we just had a discussions, but anything else? Yes.
When we get a WordPress default things as a function of PHP, actually it's not pluggable, so you can create your own function while you write that, so you can put in a function and then appear on every page you have and go into each template. So if you get a generic one,
Oh, right, okay.
if you look at the link inside one of the sections, you'll see it calls a function.
Okay.
So you actually do just create a function with the same name, just say if
Oh, right,
the
okay.
function exists, then
All right, thanks for that. It's really useful. Does everyone get that? Yeah. Sorry?
No.
Not
No.
that.
Do you want to stand up and explain it to me?
Well,
Well, yeah, there's it's pluggable, isn't it? This particular function. So if you want to, rather than my sort of kind of roundabout way of doing it, then you can rewrite your own function in your theme, and it will then substitute your function in.
one of the default thing in functions PHP is a function which actually returns the principal values. So you just create your own function with the same name, and you say if not function exists, then you use your code instead of what's in the thing. So you only do it for a couple of them.
Thanks for that. Yeah, sorry, it's hard for me to see what's going on there.
That's all right. Just a quick question regarding when you use pagination. What would you say is a rule of thumb about how many posts to have on a page before you use pagination?
It's a good question. I tend to. This is just my own view, right? Just my own view. I think if you have like on your blog, on your index.php, if you have more than 10, then you're sort of, it starts to potentially get a longer page. It varies though. But sometimes it depends on also the design. When I have done sites where I've used this, like where I've done a landing page for say events or something like that, the actual events page might have less on it, might have just 10 on it. Whereas on that particular Deaf Unity site, the articles page, because the layout of the articles landing page is so different, it actually I think puts out 12 because it suits the way that the page is laid out. But I think if you get into small numbers, it just means a lot of work for people. But for me, anything more than 10 or 12, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. But it really is just I don't think there's any hard and fast rules. I wouldn't cast myself as a UX expert here. I'm just sort of like talking about ideas for how stuff and things that works for me, and also that when I've run it past my clients, they seem to like. So, just my view. And that's it really. Summary, we've seen a few small enhancements, blah blah blah. Other ones that I'm not going to talk in any detail about, but I will mention, is another one to do with search. Keeping the search query in the search box when you show results. This is useful if the user maybe wants to refine their search because it's returned none at all, or nothing at all, or whether or not it's returned 50. But that's quite easy to do using that function that I mentioned earlier. Also, this was another one to do with navigation. I haven't really touched on that at all, sort of like in terms of menus and that. If you've got a site that you're doing, either your own or for a client, where you've got like quite a lot of hierarchy going on, if you're relying on drop-down menus, I think it's a useful idea to have a widget maybe in your sidebar which actually puts out like the other pages that are in this particular area. You can drop it into a page as well with a shortcut or something like that. Just something that I do. It helps people, give people a different way of getting to pages. I've got a plugin that does this based on the old wave sort of page pairing thing, and I'm actually working on a plugin that actually you can drive it off one of your custom menus, so it will do whatever your main custom menu says rather than the actual hierarchy. If anyone's interested in sort of like trying those out, I'm quite happy to share those. I use them on client sites, but come see me later if you're interested in doing that. So that's it. I'm finished. Thank you for listening.
Taking any questions?
I'm taking questions.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to shout. I'm taking questions.
So you mentioned you're working on a plugin. Are you going to release that?
Yeah, I've got eventually, yes. I've for the actual site that I was doing, the Deaf Unity site, which I'm still working on. It's not critical there because we've sort of sorted out the hierarchy in terms of the pages and stuff like that. But it was done as a theoretical thing to see whether it's feasible to do it, and it is feasible to do it. It's a bit of dealing with the contents of a custom menu is not as straightforward as like saying what's my parent. There's a lot more to it going on there, but it actually is kind of working in the test tube. So I will finish it at some point in the near future. And I haven't got any other plugins in the repository yet, but I've written a few sort of little ones like that. But I'm intending to get those in once I sort of get around to it.
Well, the Finnish guy that
Yes.
did the other plugin you suggested, have you written to him to ask him to incorporate that number of searches into his results?
I haven't done so. I have been in contact with the man. He's a very helpful, because when I first started using that plugin, which was about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, something like that, it did have a couple of bugs in it, and there was some problems that I was having. I couldn't get it to work quite right. He was really helpful, and he was sort of, he responded quite quickly. So it's something that I could ask him to do.
Yeah. Like you say, from a usability perspective, it is really helpful.
Yeah.
And it seems weird that he's got such a great plugin.
Yes.
He's missing that
Yeah, I guess so.
12 characters of code.
Yeah.
That would make it really amazing.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I could suggest to him. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How do you go about testing for screen readers?
I use one.
If you don't have one.
Yes, well that's okay. Well, it's a style in the style sheet. I had that class of SRDR sort for screen reader. You can use whatever you like. Visually hidden, I think, is the actual WordPress standard one. It's very simple to make text available for screen readers, but hide it from sighted users. What you do is just say position absolute, and then set the left value to minus 9,999 pixels, and it literally, everything else moves up, and it just shifts it off the page. So it's not available or it's not there for sighted users effectively, but as far as screen readers are concerned, it's all still there. So that's all you need to know really. But you can, if you really want to get involved in screen readers, there are two things. There's the actual NVDA screen reader itself is free to download. It's an open source screen reader, which I recommend. It works best with Firefox. But the other thing is there's also a Firefox plugin that is called FANGS. There's a screen reader, one of the sort of industry standard screen readers is one called JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech, which is like a really naff acronym, but it's a catchy name. It's made by a company, American company called Freedom Scientific. It's not cheap, and that's why the open source one is a good bet, because you can just download that for free. I think it costs a few $100s to get JAWS. And but the Firefox add-on called Fangs, what it does, if you run Fangs on a page, it will effectively print out in text on your page what a screen reader would effectively announce to you. So that's a useful thing to use. So there's two ideas there. NVDA, I mean, all screen readers take a bit of getting used to, but that's a possibility. Okay.
Don't Macs have built-in screen readers?
They do, yeah, VoiceOver. You could try it out with that. And to be honest, I haven't done much with VoiceOver. I do have an iPad now, and I'm starting to learn VoiceOver, but I haven't really done much with that. But, the principle is the same. As far as I know, all screen readers will, if you use the style sheet declaration that I mentioned earlier, will actually pick that up. The thing not to do is do a display none, because if you do a display none, then yeah, it doesn't become available for sighted users. But screen readers, screen readers see that too and act upon that as well. So if you do display none, it's hidden for screen reader users as well. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.